So hello everyone. In this second part of our SANAE software testing beer online, here with me is Róbert Kolcún from Aiviro. He will talk about their RPA solution powered by artificial intelligence and how it can be used for testing. Hopefully he will join because I don't see.
Really?
Yes, I see just the hourglass.
Oh,
So just try to share the screen. Oh, I can see you.
Okay.
Perfect.
Now I
So
will try to make
stage
a
is
full
yours,
screen. Okay.
and have a nice talk.
Thanks a lot. So firstly, thanks a lot for introducing me, and I want to say hi to everybody. My name is Róbert Kolcún, and I'm part of Aiviro team, as you already heard. And today I will try to present to you a testing robot that actually sees. So let's get into that. Firstly, we should answer the very simple question, and that's what is Aiviro? In the simplest way, we could say that it's just a robot, or also the set of robots, as later I will show you, we can use the robot for web testing, for desktop app testing, or for also remote connection to the other machine testing. It's a tool which is powered by AI, so artificial intelligence, and the idea behind this is that you can control any user interface with the same tools, basically with the same test script in different environments on different machines. What is it good for? As I already said, we are focusing mainly on the process automation. So for example, if you need to connect in the back office or in some other place in your company, several applications, you need to import some kind of payments or export them, bank transfers, whatever it's this, you can use Aiviro for this. And also the second part, you can use the same tool also for testing your applications. So why to use it? As I already presented, for optimizing your processes, and mainly for basically getting rid of some manual testing, and you can just automate all your tests together. So let's switch to the next one, and I will explain to you how our robot actually works. As you can see on the screen, we have 4 layers into which we can split how we are defining a user interface from different perspectives, from different views. The lowest one, the bottom layer, is a programmer's source code, which in the ideal world should be basically nice, readable, formatted code that some developer wrote. And it's basically, let's say, kind of straightforward and contains all the necessary stuff that it should for the application, for the user interface. The next thing, as we want to make our job easier, we always use certain type of a UI framework, so that we don't have to solve all the problems. We can just really focus on developing our app from the user perspective. But this is also kind of a drawback, and that's that our nicely readable code that some developer wrote is transferred or like formatted through the framework. And now we will get to the third layer, and that's basically what's the output of the framework. There is some kind of final representation of our user interface, of our buttons, inputs. It's maybe in web development, web app, we have JavaScript and some other stuff. And this is exactly the layer where most of the tools for automation and also testing are working with. In the practical demonstration, then I will show you basically compare classical automation with Aiviro, and you will see what's the difference, how we actually work with this. And now the top layer, which is basically the most important, is the user's view, the graphical representation of our app. This is the layer with which the user is interacting with and working with. It's not this source code, like the final representation of our user interface, but it's this graphical interpretation. And that's exactly where Aiviro is come handy, and with what layer we are working. So we are kind of moving up, and we are trying to, like, we can basically work the same way, look at the application exactly the same way as user would look on. So let's show you some example how we are actually recognizing the user interface compared to some classical tools. On the first picture, you can see some classical automation tool, and we want to click on one of these 6 buttons. But the problem is that as this tool is using the code, like the source code representation of the app, it cannot really distinguish between all the elements. So basically the whole group of elements is described as just the one big element, which is a problem, because then basically we cannot automate the application or test the application. Compared to Aiviro, where, for example, here you can see the OCR, which is the optical character recognition, and we can exactly distinguish every element, every text, every word, and then we have some kind of post-processing when we are also concatenating all the words together into sentences, so it's also easier for you to identify all the necessary elements. But I will show you more example so that you understand more deeply how we actually see the user interface. Here you can see a GitLab application, and as you could already saw, we have the text, but also we recognize all the other elements. We have the icons, for example, at the left navigation bar. At the top one also we have some kind of icons. We have here some kind of input field. Here is another input field where you can change the branch, and then we have some buttons here. If you would want to tell Aiviro to click, for example, at the button, you would just really simply specify, I want the button, which has a label delete, and click, like the event for the button would be a click event. And Aiviro would recognize the whole screen, will recognize all the elements, basically match together the text with the elements together, and find the best match for your request. The next one, this is a small joke, or like small funny stuff that we tried to do. We took the user interface from 1990 and tried to automate it. As you can see, we can still basically, let's say, from 95% recognize all the elements from the user interface. And basically this is exactly the benefit of our robots. If you understand the element as a button, or the user sees the element as a button, also our robot will see the element exactly the same way. And if there would be any problem that, for example, maybe you could say that this is the text area, or maybe here is some kind of mislead recognition, you can always retrain the whole neural network that we are using, and then it will work much better, and it will exactly suit your need for the application. Now, when you want to use it, as I already mentioned, in general, you can use it for process automation and for testing, but where exactly? The benefit of Aiviro is that you can have a one test case, And this test case you need to run in a Windows environment, in a Linux environment, and also in macOS environment. On all these free platforms, you can be developing the app using different frameworks due to the operating system, due to the support of the operating system. But you want the application to look exactly the same way. Maybe the buttons on the macOS will look differently compared to Windows, but they should have the same labels. They should have the same. They should do the same actions in your application. So, and as Aiviro can see every type of the button as a button, and you have the same labels for the same buttons, you can run one test case in 3 different environments at once, which when we are getting to the parallelization, and you just need to write one test script. And there is no other things you don't need to install any additional software. You don't need to install any additional extensions to be able to somehow like hack into your app from the background to access the code that's below the user interface and interact with it. We are interacting from the top part, exactly the same way how users see the app, and that's why you can specify the elements always the same way. Also, the next thing is you have some kind of exotic apps. We have clients which are having applications which are really old, which are not supported basically anymore. They're running in really old environments. Then that's exactly another use case to using our robots. Which, when we are getting to it, it's non-invasive, so that you don't need to install any other extensions and any additional software. And also, you can run, for example, the web tests in a headless mode. And now we will get to some practical demonstration, and I will actually show you the differences, how the code looks like, and we will also run some simple example, and we will talk about it. So let me now switch. I hope I will just. Okay, I hope you can see the screen of the source code. Please somehow just confirm to me that you can see that. Okay, nice. I hope that it's readable. If not, then I just recommend you to make a full screen from the sharing part, from the shared screen. So what we have here on the left side, this is the script. Everything is written in Python. And on the left side, we have a testing script using Aiviro. On the right side, we have exactly the same testing script written in Selenium, which is a common testing framework that you can use for testing of web applications. We will be testing that's our internal applications where employees are just filling up their hours they work and maybe uploading some other necessary stuff for their work and etc. But that's not really important. The simple test case will do that. We will log in into the system, and we will create a new employee, check all the information, and then at the end we will delete the new employee. But let's now see the differences between how we are specifying the elements. In Aiviro, we are using the concept that we call a search object. So, for example, if I want to wait for some kind of text to appear on the screen, I can just specify to the robot that wait for something, and now I can specify I want a text element, and I will specify the label by which the text should be specified, in which case it should appear on the screen. Then the next thing, I want to just type the text into which I want to type into the input field, which is specified by some label username. here, what Aiviro does basically, as we recognize all the words on the screen and all the elements, we are trying to find the best match for the element, or like in a simpler way, we can say the closest text to this element. So as for the input, you can have it on the left side, above the element, or also inside. We have some simple rules for this. We'll do the same for the password, and then we will click on the button and we will log in. And now look at the right side. Selenium works a little bit in a different way, and that's why that firstly you need to find the element, and then you are specifying the action, where compared to Aiviro, we are doing it in the opposite direction. Here, you already see that it's not so straightforward. You have some backslashes input, which contains some value, which is a name, and the value is username. From this, you could know basically that you want to try to type into the input, which is a username. But if someone would decide that he wants to wrap this element into some other CSS class, or wants to change the identification for this element, the name of this element, the test script would already failed. Compared to Aiviro, if you keep the label, so for example, if you wouldn't be testing the app in different language, in that case, you would need to change the labels. But if the input would be moved to the right side or to the bottom of the website or something else, there is no need to change anything basically in your test script. We can look closely to some other example. There is also option in Selenium to specify by IDs, which is easy and nice, but the person who is developing the app needs to know that every element needs to have a unique ID. And sometimes you can have also dynamic IDs, so then it's harder to specify the element that you want. And the worst case is if someone would try to specify the element and copy the path from the browser. In that case, you basically know that maybe you are working with the button, most probably, but you have no idea what button it is. Where if you would look to Aiviro site, it should be almost last one, so it should be this one. You already know. Okay, we are clicking on the button, and there is the text delete on it. The next example can be seen here. You know, it's some kind of drop-down input, but if this test would fail and you would just look into the source code of the test case, you wouldn't exactly know which input should I check, which input is not working properly, let's say. But if we look on the left side, we want to type this text, so it's basically this line. We know, okay, so it's input, and it's a personal leader input. So now we know that we need to check this input in our app, if it's working properly. So that's from how we can basically identify the elements. Now I will try to run the test case. As I said, we can test it in headless mode or non-headless mode. I will now change it to the headless one. And also another feature that we have is that basically every robot is having its own video stream. So you can connect to this stream just via browser, and you can exactly see what the robot is doing. I will show it to you. I will run the test case, which will generate for me a link to the where the robot is streaming, and now you can see the stream from the robot. So we will just fill up the login credentials, the username, the password, and we will click on the login button. We'll wait until the app is fully loaded, And now we will click on the green button in the top left corner, which is a new employee. We will fill up now all the necessary information that we should. So the first name, the last name, email address, the username that the employee will use to access the system, in which team it should work, which personal leader should have, and some other required field to create a new employee. So we will fill all the necessary stuff. Now we will scroll down and save the new employee. We will now wait until it's everything loaded. We will filter our new employee by its name. We see that it's here. We will click on it and now check all the information that are correctly in the same way as when we were filling the form. And we want to now delete the employee from the database so that it will not stay there and we can run the test again in the same conditions. So that's all from this test case. We log in inside, we create a new employee, and then we check all the information and delete it. Another part that I want to show you is using a different type of robots. As I said before, you can run one test case in different environments. For example, like I said, the Windows, Linux, Mac OS, or different browsers. But also, if we wrote the test case, which is using a web robot, but we can also run the same test case in a way that on my desktop, on my laptop, I will just open the Google Chrome browser and run the same test case there. And as you can see, the only difference between this is changing the robot, and then you need to specify that you want to run some kind of process, which is Google Chrome, and you need to type the required URL into the URL input in a Chrome browser. But besides this, the rest of the test case, it's formatted in different way, but it's completely the same. So there is nothing else you need to basically change, as the app should look exactly the same way. Another example that I can give you is we have, let's move this to the side. We have a test case. We are again using the web robot, and here we have the same app, but the same app is written in maybe 10, 12 using different frameworks. So in the background, in the source code of the app, it can look differently. The final representation, which is generated by the framework. But as the app again should look exactly the same way, we can just iterate through all the web pages and run the same test case for every single of them without changing anything in the test case. And another thing that you can check, you can not only, for example, click on the buttons, type a text, select something from the drop-down buttons, fill up the forms, wait for some elements to appear, close them, etc., etc. But you can also just find the element. And as we are working with the visual aspect of the app, you can check that all the elements are centered in a one column. Or you can check that do the laundry task is about go shopping task, or in different way, the pay the bills is below the go shopping task. So you can also visually check that basically the user would see all the tasks, like all the elements on the screen exactly the way that you are expecting to see. So that's from my practical demonstration. So we will come back to the presentation. And now I will talk about the integration of the Aiviro. We have for sure some basic integration, as for example, if the robot finishes the task, it can send you the email if it fails, if it passes, or any other information you want. We have an integration, for example, with the teams. So you can just write to the teams and the robot will start the job for you. Or you can also integrate all your tests in your CI/CD if you want. The whole tool is basically just one Python package. So whenever you set up a Python environment, for example, in the Docker file and into your continuous integration, you can run all the test cases there, but the robot can still connect to some remote machine using the remote desktop protocol, for example, and it can run your test cases in completely different environments. So that's all from me, and now we can get to the, let's say, the fun part, and I can answer to all your questions if you have any of them.
Okay, so if you have any question, please enter them into the chat or into the questions section, as I mentioned, or if you are brave enough, you can raise your hand and we can handle you the microphone, and you will ask by voice. So any question? I will check the chat. No chat, no questions. So, if there are no questions, Robert is still available via LinkedIn, or you can see his contact by email. So, if you want anything to know more about Aiviro and how it is how it can be used for testing, or any other things in your company, feel free to contact him.
We are getting some questions, so maybe if we have a time.
Perfect. So what, they don't have to write scripts themselves, Aiviro does them from them, right?
I mean, you still need to write the test case, but we also, for example, have a recorder where you can just basically click on the screen, it will record all your actions, and then it will generate a test script for you. It depends how complicated it can be. Maybe in some case you need to check something and rewrite, but in general, almost 95% you can do basically this way. So yeah, I can say that in some way you don't need to write the script, but in most cases, for example, in automation, when there are some more complex stuff, we are always writing the whole test case.
And the second question from Lukáš is, so basically the Aiviro robot serves to facilitate the tester's job.
Basically, yeah. I mean, the whole point is that you can, I would say, in really human readable way, write the test case. And also for the developer is then, I would say, much easier if some kind of test case fails. And for example, as you see the XPath in the Selenium, it may not be so straightforward for developer where it fails. So it really helps you. It shouldn't be exactly that, you know, you shouldn't lose your job, let's say this way. Aiviro is here to just help you so that you can make more creative work with it.
Okay, any other questions? Are the tests that slow?
if you would compare to Selenium, yeah, of course, the tests are slower from the fact that you need to recognize the whole screen and process the screen. So yeah, they are slower, but it depends. For example, we are using a cache. So if you run the test case the first time, it may be slower, but then all the elements and all the information are already cached locally for you. So then the test case it's much faster for the next runs.
Okay, any other questions? Well, I have to say we will close and suddenly the questions will come. Okay, so if there are no questions, I will end this session, but the event is still on. You can use our launch to sit. There are tables. You can sit there. You can speak with your colleagues and have fun like this in a virtual way. And so I hope you enjoyed also this second presentation. Thank you very much, Robert, for
Thank you also for inviting me.
And see you next time. And use our launch to meet